Hi folks, it's Wednesday. We're getting our way through the week, aren't we? These weeks are going past faster and faster and faster. But anyway, hope you're all having a wonderful, wonderful week. We're doing some more Hobby Nightmares today. If you like what I do, the subscribe button is down below. Please make sure you go and support Composite Games. We have a really big announcement on a very large prize draw heading your way to do with Composite Games in the near future. So, please go and support them if you can. They do a lot for the channel. They help me out with models to give to you and things like that are all going to be going on this year. And also, we need to keep supporting local retailers. So, if you want to do that, head over to Composite Games, use the promo code Northern Exile down below to get yourself 5% off your order at checkout. So, moving on to some Hobby Nightmares. Today, we have a trip down memory lane, or at least a trip down where a bit of nostalgia for those people who are in the hobby right now, who were there in the 90s. We have heard from a manager of Games Workshop who was there in the 90s, and so he's going to give us a few anecdotes and a little trip, as I just said, down memory lane to what Games Workshops used to be like. Or maybe there might be a little nightmare thrown in here or there, we'll see. Anyway, GW Dan says, "Hi North. Having heard about your experiences with Games Workshop, it made me reflect on mine, and the familiar patterns repeat ad nauseum, at least for me. Another title for this could be Hobby Times in Cambridge, because it starts a little earlier than Games Workshop. I'm going to use real first names, it was so long ago. No one related to these events works for Games Workshop, etc. anymore, and probably hasn't for 20 plus years. Towards the tail end of the 80s into the early 90s, the hobby store in Cambridge, UK, was called Games and Puzzles, and it was on Green Street. It had a super, really rubbish old owner that wasn't really interested in the hobby, as far as we were concerned. And as far as he was concerned, he had a toy shop. No tables, nowhere to play, just a shop. So, it was always the staff there that folk looked up to. At that time specifically, Chris, a cool musician gamer with cred. As cool kids, we were in awe, and he seemed to be in a crazy out of reach position. A shop assistant, you know what I mean? But anyway, kids. He disappeared one day to work for Games Workshop. The dizzy heights of almost stardom. That's still a thing, mate. That's still a thing. That's still a thing. A lot of the guys that I knew at university who loved the hobby, when I started working for Games Workshop properly, they sort of lost touch with me. They sort of cooked me out and just got rid of me. I don't know why. You know. Anyway, it could be because they don't agree with what the company is doing, or it could be jealousy. I don't know. But yeah, it is weird. A year or two later, randomly riding home with friends, we cycled past the Games Workshop sign on a storefront. Bloody hell, that came out of nowhere. No notices in White Dwarf about an opening, nothing. To go on a brief tangent, back in the day, Games Workshop store openings were the bomb. The first 100 through the door got a boxed game or an RPG for £1. Before moving to Cambridge, I lived in London and made it to the Hammersmith and Oxford Street Plaza openings. Also, everything else was crazy cheap. Discounts abound on those glorious grand opening days. This was just as Games Workshop / Citadel were moving away from products made by other companies for exclusive in-house Games Workshop Citadel stock. Back to the main story anyway. Yeah, can you imagine these days Games Workshop doing any sort of sale or discount for normal customers? They're incredible. The Cambridge storefront was just a sign though, and it was an empty shell inside. We cycled past there every week for months and nothing changed. We forget for a while, mostly because there was no news, and it was also quite out of our way. A literal spot hidden roll was needed to find it. I was really upset when I found out that they had a soft opening way before it was announced in White Dwarf, and so it had actually been open a month before we found out. That actually really sucks. But I guess you were there around the time that Games Workshop was starting to move away from things like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, they were actually moving away from being there all the time. But anyway. Turns out, it was in such a secluded location because they got an amazing deal on a 10-year lease. I found out later that that decision led to somebody getting fired. They moved on to the high street as soon as that lease was up, and then again sometime later. Yeah, you don't want to be in the back streets of a town as a Games Workshop store. You want to be front and centre. Anyway. And Chris was the first manager once the shop opened. I was so chuffed to get my first Mini in the display cabinet back in the day when they let customers have stuff on display. That ended quickly. Not in my store. Not in my store. I had customers, so I was quite lazy, and I'd paint really slowly, because I was really busy. And so all of my cabinets were customer models, all of them. I never had any of my own models in there, it was just all customer models, all the time. Chris didn't last long. A year tops, I think, before the corporate environment didn't suit him, or the other way around. He went off to work for Forbidden Planet, and randomly I ran into him opening a branch in Southampton in 1997, 1996, 1997-ish, when I started university there. Mark followed Chris. He was the kind of idiot that waved their position over you, lauding the lofty position as manager, as though it had been some sort of social currency to anybody over the age of 14. If your claim to fame is that you can hold court with a bunch of prepubescent children, what else needs to be said? What a muppet. But he had cool staff. Mark used to humiliate his opponents when playing a game, but he only won by cheating, using his authority to bully opponents into his version of the rules and rulings, even though they were clearly BS. He had a really great assistant, Matt. Heads up trigger warning, involving a motorcycle accident coming up later. The following manager, Jason, was also a total moron that had a hugely inflated ego and always had a story that one-upped yours, no matter how extreme. Yeah, my favourite saying about people like that is that if you've been to Tenerife, he's been to 11erife. It's my favourite. It just makes me chuckle every time. Anyway, one of the part-time workers had an accident working on a building site. Jason, of course, had a similar accident in which he fell several floors, crashing through floorboards in slow motion, seeing his life flash before his eyes. Fucking yawn. Oh, jeez. Oh, jeez, oh, jeez, oh, jeez. They're the worst. They're the absolute worst. I'm telling you now, man, that is the absolute worst. Anyway, on a Friday night, Jason would wear dungarees and have a toothbrush sticking out of the top pocket. If you're picturing someone looking like a Dexy's Midnight Runners, you're not far off. Dude, you're so old, no one's gonna know that fucking reference. No one's gonna know that. Even I don't know that reference, and it sounds like something that one of my 50-year-old friends would come up with. Mostly, the toothbrush was there for someone to notice and ask him about it. Obviously, falling for it, I did. Well, I did ask him, and he said, well, who knows where I'll be sleeping tonight, was his stock response. Oh, for God's sake. You know he's not getting any. Let's not be silly. He also used to exclusively pull women that were really not very attractive. It may be the bottom of the barrel, he'd say, but it's fun down there. Oh my God. So cringy that decades later, I remember all of this clear as day. He lasted less than a year, I think. At least Matt still worked there. Matt was promoted to interim manager after Jason left, and Matt, as I just said, was really cool, and he hired me as a part-time weekender. Myself and a guy called Ben. I went to college shortly after that, so stayed working part-time while Ben became a full-timer. This sucks, man. I really wish we could still do this. It's not a thing Games Workshop do anymore. They never ease anybody in anymore, you know? They used to create lifers. Like, they'd get like a guy straight out of college. They'd start him, well, straight in college. They'd start him on weekend work, and you'd fall into it. And then by the time you leave college, you get a full-time job there, and you're away. You know, that kind of thing. It just sucks. At some point during Matt's time in Cambridge, it was peak Games Workshop for me. 40k just released its first boxed version, and I think they released Warhammer Fantasy Battle with the Elves and Goblins. The first large box set, which is now the standard large box, not the smaller A4 sized 2nd edition. Matt respected us as co-workers even though he was the manager. We also didn't take the piss or abuse his kindness, but everybody had fun. Lots of memories about swapping out whatever, now that's what they call music release, was corporate's flavour of the month, to stuff that rocked out a little. Then having to run to the machine to forward the swearing or grimace slightly as you're talking to a parent, and knowing it's coming up, and you're not able to do anything about it. I used to do that all the time. Yes, I used to do that all the time. Like, I'd put my metal music on, and there'd be like a sweary bit coming up, but I'm like knee deep in a sail, like a big sail. I'm like, ah, shit. Like, there was one time when I had this metal compilation album on, and Down With the Sickness came on, and I was like, by Disturbed, and I was like, oh, cool, yeah, I like Disturbed, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm talking to people, everyone's having a good time, and I'm thinking, well, I'm going to go over there and fast forward it before it gets to the sweary bit towards the end. This mother comes in, and you know the bit I'm talking about. This mother comes in, starts talking to me, and I'm like, oh, brilliant, Christmas sale, yes. I'm in there, I'm gesticulating, doing all this, yeah, brilliant, yeah. And she's going, oh, brilliant, fantastic, oh, my son's going to love it here. And then the sweary bit comes on, which is basically David Draymond, like, shouting about how his mother is a whore for, like, a full minute or whatever it is. Her face just goes pale. She goes, anyway, I'll be back in a few days. I'm like, yeah, okay, bye. And I never saw her again. Never saw her again. I love that. That's something universal to all Games Workshop managers. You're running back to the machine, go, skip, 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 skip. Right, yeah, brilliant. Love it. Anyway, Matt was transferred to the Hammersmith store to finally become a permanent manager, and Leo came next. Leo was ex-army and had some kind of ring given for excellence in sniper sharpshooting skills. He wore a ring. He didn't see the humour in me asking if it was the ring of Nurgle. It basically looked like the design of 3 overlapping circles. What the fuck did he expect? The following year, I told folks that I was going to see Matt whilst visiting London, and got nothing but looks of shock in return. Trigger warning reminder. It turns out Matt had been killed. Oh no. Months ago, and nobody told me. That's how communication happened in the store back then. If you're not there at the time, nobody catches you up, and obviously, no internet really. Sadly, his motorbike slipped on ice and he went under the front of an articulated lorry on Christmas Eve, as he was riding home to see his family. Oh no. That's horrible. That's horrible. Anyway, the GOD God Squad should be noted here. Quite often, in between store manager changes, the God Squad would descend and make sure things ran the way they should be, or to take over for an interim period. Essentially, they were dispatched from Nottingham HQ to sort out a store that was off the rails for whatever reason. Chris Bone was the leader. He appeared in plenty of White Dwarfs and Games Days around this time as Commissar Bone. There are too many pictures of him dressed like an Imperial Commissar, I swear. He was followed in tow by 2 Matts. The 2 Matts. One of the Matts was Matt Felcher, but I think that was more of a joke than his real name, right? He was probably called Fletcher or something. By the way, he was the Felcher. He was as grim as that sounds. I don't recall too much about the other Matt. Paul stepped in as a temporary manager, transferring from the Peterborough shop. He commuted daily. Not much to say about him, really, except that I helped out a lot of store events during this time. Generally, as a part-timer, Games Workshop took the piss, and expected you to be there all the time on the weekend and Thursday late nights, whilst only getting paid for 8 hours a week. Pretty shortly after he started, the Games Workshop policy changed, and they fired all of the part-time employees to introduce key time workers. Basically, a BS move to reduce staffing and not have as many full-time employees. That's true. That's true. That's the reason why we can't have the fun people in Games Workshop anymore, really. I'm pretty sure that's true because I tried to fight it through an employment tribunal and had some verification through BS corporate speak from head office, but a part of me feels like it could have been more specific. It took me about 20 years to get over the treatment before I could get back into a games workshop on that side of the hobby. Ultimately, it helped my career in human resources because I knew there must be better ways to treat people than this. It's funny to hear all the stories of how folks say Games Workshop has become corporate recently. My experience of my experience of that was that it started transitioning somewhere during the early 90s and really became that way once they floated in on the stock market. No real surprise there. That was about the time that full-time staff stopped being able to buy miniatures on weight and would basically get plastic sprues for free. Of course, this was in the UK, and I hear that the US side continued to be the Wild West, pun intended, for long after that. It still is. It still is. As far as I'm aware, most stores in the US are not like the UK stores at all. Most managers in the US aren't overworked and underpaid, and aren't, like, you know, shouted at for no reason, you know. If you want to be a Games Workshop manager, weirdly, the UK is the worst place to be one. It just is what it is. At one point, I went for an interview in Nottingham for a full-time position at the Cambridge Games Workshop branch. That was a weird experience. My interview was on a Monday. The Saturday before, we had a store reopening with events and discounts. Gone were the days of mega discounts. I was running a few games for people walking through the door. Someone friendly from head office was down to help. Imagine my surprise and relief when the very same HQ person was the one interviewing me the following week. That quickly turned sour as I realised they had no recollection of me or the conversations we had had. Literally 48 hours prior. Still, I got a nice tour of the factory. I didn't get the job. When I asked why, I was told that it was because I wasn't willing to relocate to Newcastle. That was a little odd. He never directly asked me to do that. Why would you be relocating to Newcastle if you wanted a thing in the Cambridge store? I think what you're saying is you wouldn't relocate from Newcastle, right? Okay. Alright. That was a little odd. He never directly asked me to do that. We briefly discussed it and I mentioned how excited that I was a store was opening in the Metro Centre and how I'd always wanted to visit Newcastle. Okay, now you're confusing me. So you applied for a job at Cambridge, right? Okay. I'm gonna just say that again. You applied for the job at no. So you applied for the job at the Newcastle store that was opening up, right? Okay, fine. And then obviously all this happened. He hasn't remembered who you are. Has said that you're not willing to relocate to Newcastle, so you're not getting the job, even though he never asked you to relocate. Got ya. Okay. We briefly discussed it, and I mentioned how excited I was that a store was opening in the Metro Centre, and how I'd always wanted to visit Newcastle. It is pretty wild, though. They expected staff to relocate at their own expense on a salary that couldn't really cover rent, along with the cost of living. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Yes, exactly the same thing happened to me. Exactly the same thing happened to me. So, to get the job at Games Workshop, essentially, I kind of impressed the manager I was being interviewed by, because I said, look, I'll relocate here. I really want to work for Games Workshop, right? I want to give my kid a stable home and all that kind of a thing. So I want to come here, and he went for that. He loved it, and I stayed with Games Workshop for a while therein. But it still dealt with me moving halfway across the country at my own expense and getting a flat I couldn't really afford. I was living hand to mouth. I'd get paid by Games Workshop, and 3/4 of my money would go on my rent. The rest of it, I'd be living on pot noodles and, ready meals and stuff, because I just couldn't afford anything else, Anyway. During my time, and even then, by the way, I was still in the red. I was still eating into my savings to work at Games Workshop. I would only eat into it like £50 a month, do you know what I mean? But it was still like, I was still making a loss, net loss, working at Games Workshop. And then when I got to be a manager, I was making no loss at Games Workshop, right? But I wasn't making money. I was getting money once a month, and I was losing all of my money once a month. getting money. I was not saving anything. I was not doing anything. I was just treading water. So I'd gone from losing £50 a month to zero. You know, net zero. Which is not a way to get a job. You know, that is not a job you want to be staying in for the rest of your life, which is something that I came to appreciate later on. Because Games Workshop pay you in a way that is kind of illegal. If you look at the actual laws of the UK, but, you know, big companies like this, they just get away with it. They just get away with it. And because no one takes them to tribunals, no one really wants to have a go at them because of their legal might. And the fact that they can literally bury you in litigation until you run out of money. So, what would be the point? Anyway, during my first time working at Games Workshop Cambridge in the 90s, crusty and often smelly hobbyists, affectionately known as longbeards, less affectionately known as beardy fucks, weren't generally welcome back then either. The focus was, and still is, on new players and intro games. Those old table tennis tables, split into half, had 4 times intro games on every day except Thursday nights. Intro games were generally Warhammer Fantasy, Warhammer 40k, and other simple games like Epic, Blood Bowl, Man of War, that sort of thing. Thursday night was late night opening, and were what you're calling veterans nights right now. Anyone could play with any sort of army list as long as they were painted, etc. Okay, cool. That's cool. You wouldn't get Epic, Blood Bowl, or Man of War in Games Workshop now. In fact, when I joined Games Workshop, Blood Bowl had just been released, the new one, and we had a Blood Bowl table, but it was like a cardboard plastic table with a pitch on it, right? And that was there for 2 months, and then we got rid of it, never to be seen again. In fact, our manager threw it in the bin, despite both staff members there requesting that we have it, you know, that one of us got it. It would be quite nice, we could play Blood Bowl on it. But anyway. To be successful at Games Workshop in the 90s, you needed to be part of the Sealed Knot. Basically, an old boys group of Civil War reenactors. The kind of thing that would eventually lead to one of the Perry twins losing an arm during a cannon mishap. Really? Wow. Having said all this, you can tell this guy worked there. That's some trivia. Wow, that's cool. Having said all of this, not cool that happened, but cool that, you know. Having said all of this, I'll leave with my final thought. There has been lots of debates on this channel about when the peak time in the hobby actually was. I noted above that peak Games Workshop was during the early 90s for me, but the peak time in the hobby for everybody, me included, was when you were 10 or 12 years old, or first introduced to it. It's all sour downhill times in Games Workshop land from that point on eventually, especially when you work for them. A truism is never meet your heroes. They always let you down. Never work for them either. There is, and always has been, a gulf in difference between the Games Workshop hobby and Games Workshop corporate. So many backstabbing gobshites that get to lord over folks because of their, again, self-imposed importance they have on their own BS. Anyway, those are my thoughts and recollections. Dan, that was brilliant, man. Thank you very much for that. And I agree. I think we've hit on something there where a lot of people say that Prime GW was at different times in their lives. But I bet you when you think Prime GW was, whether you're arguing that it was the early 90s, the mid-90s, the late 90s, the early noughties, whatever you say it was, right? Could even be the mid-noughties, late noughties, I don't know. Whatever you say it was, I bet you were 10 to 15 years old when you're thinking back to how good it used to be. I think Dan's hit on a really salient point there. You know, a really salient point, a really good one, in that I don't think there is really an argument to be had for when Games Workshop was at its best. I really don't. I think Games Workshop, as Dan has just said there, Games Workshop was at its best when you were 10 to 15 years old. You know, and you loved the hobby, you loved everything about it, and you just skated over the corporate politics because you didn't get it. Right? It never affected you. And there was always one or two people at your local Games Workshop who were really nice to talk to. And most of them were staff, you know? So that's where we are, I think, with Games Workshop. I think when you were 10 to 15 years old, that's when Games Workshop was the best for you. And in reality, I say it shorthand that, Games Workshop used to be really good. We can't do things that like this anymore. But Games Workshop's always been a corporate piece of shit. I don't think it's ever been any different. I think when we were 10 to 15 years old, it just fooled us. It just fooled us. Nobody wants to see how the sausage is made. Do you know what I mean? So, it just is what it is. The hobby is what it is, and Games Workshop is what it is. But I think Dan's hit on a really good point there, in that there was no golden age for Games Workshop. There was no absolute, this was the golden age. In terms of wrestling, there was no Attitude Era for Games Workshop. It's always been like this. At differing severities. I think now we are at an extreme corporate severity. But things that Dan saw back then, I probably would have thought working the Games Workshop back when Dan did to be some sort of utopia in comparison to how it is now. It's just that by the standards of the day, things have gotten more and more and more corporate over the past 20 years, to the fact that, we now look at people who do Warhammer as consumers. Right? We are people who consume content rather than customers and fans. Which is wrong. But anyway, moving on. Drexmex says, listen up, North. Oh, you cheeky bastard. I won't listen up. Just say hello. Don't be cheeky. You go over my knee. Listen up, North. I'm joking, of course. I just wanted to get your attention. Alright, okay, fair enough. I wanted to bring something up that's been going on with me for the past few years. This is not a single hobby nightmare, but more of a cluster of things that have happened to me in the tournament scene. And yes, I'm a lady. Okay. Whenever somebody says that, I always think of Little Britain back in the day. I'm a lady. That kind of thing. And no American person will get that at all. But it always made me really... It was always funny. Anyway, moving on. By the way, Little Britain, go and look it up on YouTube. There is no way that show could ever be made in the modern day. Like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Anyway. Yes, I'm a lady. I'm 36, and to be honest, I've been described by my ex-boyfriends, all of which were into metal music like me, as a Christina Scabbia lookalike, which is nice. I fucking bet it is. I fucking bet it is. Good for you. But it does lead to some awkward interactions. I know, boo-hoo, you're good looking and all that, but I wanted to be straight with you and tell you that I despise it when people do that for attention. There is no pic attached to this email, I get no clout for it, I get no pat on the back for anything that is in this email. I just wanted to share my experience and see what your subscribers think. You seem to have a good base of folks here. I do. Mostly level-headed. I get the odd dick coming in and just saying nasty things for nasty things' sake, but yeah, I'm most of the people on Discord and on here are very nice. Anyway, anecdote 1 deals with my second tournament ever in 2021. I brought my Tyranids to my local GT and was immediately bitten by the hobby bug. I loved everything about the tournament scene. The players, the attitudes, the lists, the atmosphere, everything. Most of the games I played were amazing and against cool people. Aside from Jeff, my last game of the weekend. He took one look at my Tyranids and rolled his eyes before saying, "You're a girl playing Nids. Fucking of course. Let's get this over with, shall we?" Wow. Wow. You've run into Biff Tannen. You've come across the high school bully from every 80s movie you've ever come across. He's like that guy from South Park when he says to Stan Marsh, "Hey, Dosh." It's like that. Anyway. He then went on to play the sweatiest list I think I've ever come up against and crushed me by the top of turn 3. We shook hands and he literally looked down his nose at me and said, "Off you go now." Sorry, that is so funny. I'm sorry. That's really funny. It just looks down his nose. Off you go now. There's another one. It just totally rubbed me the wrong way. Yeah, I can see why, dude. That guy's a chode. That guy's the worst. That's hilarious. He's so bad it's funny. Like, he's so bad it makes me laugh. Like, off you go now. Like, it waves you away. Dismissed. Next. My God. Story 2 comes from my very next tournament, where I was paired up against a dude by the name of Casey. This dude was too much everything. He made comments about my t-shirt, Tool, for anybody interested. Lads, there are cool women in the hobby, let me tell you. But not about the band, but how it accentuated my curves, quote unquote. Awkward, yeah. No shit. At the end of the game, he was like, shall we hug it out then? After I won. And I was like, sure? Because I try not to throw everybody into the pervert category, and I want to be a part of this hobby, and, you know what? I just crushed him. His hand strayed a little too far down and brushed my ass, and I pulled back. Listen, I pointed in his face. Don't do that again, alright? As I pulled away. He held his hands up and said, hey, I'm really sorry, good game. But in a way that made me think, yeah, you're not sorry at all, asshole. Wow. Okay, yeah, that's crossing a line. This guy weirdly was more of a dick than the first guy. The first guy is upfront about just like, oh god, women in the hobby, you know, that kind of a thing. The second guy, you know for a fact, this second guy would argue with me in any comment section about, I don't think you should say that about women, I think it's very disrespectful. Right? This is the kind of guy, this is how they act. This is how they act, right? You should trust, like, if you're a woman, man, you should really trust dudes who are upfront in how they feel about you. You know? If I was a woman, I would much rather trust a guy who had open contempt for me being there than a guy who's wanting to hug me and touch me and you know, give me weird compliments all the time. But because both of them don't want me there. Both of those guys don't want me in the hobby, right? It's just guy A is honest about it, and guy B is burying it under loads of really dark shit that could get me killed, right? You know? Guy A is just done with women completely. Guy B is dangerous. That's danger zone, right? That's Kenny Loggins. That's some danger zone shit right there. You need to step away from that. I'm not saying Guy A is in the right, he's not, but I would be more comfortable around him as a woman than Guy B. Jesus Christ. Be honest, dude. Just be honest. Honesty is the best policy. Never, ever, ever, ever lie to a woman. Never. Never, ever, ever. Always be honest. You'll be surprised how many women find you attractive for being honest. You'll be very surprised. Anecdote 3, and my last one for today, comes from my latest tournament. I played against a perfectly lovely guy. Not my type, though. Who made constant flirty comments and asked me about my boyfriend and any boyfriend I might be attending the event with. I told him I didn't have one. Mistake. Mistake. Because I don't lie to people. And that seemed to just open the floodgates for him giving constant compliments, making comments about my clothes, and basically throwing the game in my favour in the most patronising way. Like he just about stopped short of patting me on the head and saying, "Oh look, she actually won a game." Oh my god. Like, dude, I'm aware I lost my first 2 games of the weekend, but can you not just throw your game against me because you think I'm alright to look at? I get it. This is not the channel to say stuff like this, but the plight of women in the hobby at times is not easy. It's just not. I know we get advantages elsewhere in life, and to be honest, the odd compliment is fine and dandy. But sometimes I feel like I am an ornament here, and I'm here for the visual gratification of others. And yes, a few of the guys in this actual story beat I've actually thought were kind of handsome. So it's not like I appreciate comments from handsome people and not from normal looking people, right? I don't think e-girls help at all. I don't think e-girls help at all. Their streaming half naked and things like that basically plays into the fact that women are here in these nerdy hobbies for one thing, when most of us are here because Warhammer and gaming in general are awesome. Guys, if you want to find a hobby girl to date, you need to treat them like one of the boys. If you wouldn't say it to your bro, don't say it to us. When you get a vibe from one of us that we might be interested or we're looking your way, and you will, as a lot of us are single, then just be cool to us and make friends. You never know where that might lead. Treating us like some e-thought you saw on Twitch just leads us to walking away and resenting most of you. Anyway, thanks for your time, North. Mex. Okay, I kind of agree with that. Kind of. I do say that, alright. Here's the thing, guys, right? This is written... Remember when I said, don't take advice from women when it comes to going and getting women, because if I wanted to catch salmon, I'd go and ask a bear, not a fucking salmon, right? This is kind of what I mean. I'm not having a go, Mex, I'm not, right? I'm not having a go at all. I think the advice you give is right, it's just worded in a very girly vagina way, which doesn't really suit men at all. Your advice, I'll tell you where it will lead men, to the friend zone, right? Because if you get a handsome guy and he's just nice to you and he's normal and he doesn't push it and he doesn't actually try to give you any sort of interest, right? You'll put that guy in the friend zone and walk away. Because unlike us, you've got options. You're a hot woman. Like us, you've got options. Okay? Especially if you're in the hobby, you've got a lot of options. Your options are basically everybody in the store. So, you know, I would take your advice seriously. Yes, treat them like one of the bros, right? But as soon as you get that interest, and you get that, you know, she's looking at you, she's making comments, she's making a fuss over you, then you've got to escalate it. You can't just sit there and be friends with them the entire time, or they'll go, this guy's not available, or he wants to be friends, especially if they're not as confident as Mex is here. Mex is obviously a metalhead woman, she knows what she wants and what she likes. Most women in the hobby are just as nervous as you. So if you don't show any interest, and when they show you interest, then you're going to be in the friend zone. They're going to relegate you to there, and they're going to get freaked out and walk away, right? Now, there are ways to show interest without being a creep about it, like we've seen here, you know? There are ways to just flirt and just be nice, you know, and just be normal, rather than being an absolute weirdo. You know, I can see the attempt of the last two guys to actually do something. No. I can see the attempt of the last guy here. He's trying to flirt with you. He's trying to do all that kind of thing with you. He just does it in the wrong way. He simps for you, right? He simps for you. What you want to do is just be normal. How do I put it? How do I put this? Yeah, again, treat them like one of the bros. That was a really good way to talk about it. But the comments that you make to your bros to rib them, turn those into flirty comments to the woman, right? You can talk shit to somebody, taking the piss, right? Taking the piss out of them, and still be flirting. As long as you're doing it with a smile on your face and a gleam in your eye, right? You can do it. You can do it, right? That's what you do. And the minute you don't get anything back, stop. Just stop and walk away. Well, don't walk away, but just stop and go, okay, well, that's that, and I'm going to move on, right? Treat people like normal people. Treat her like a bro, yes, but as soon as you get any sort of interest, escalate it. Just ask them. Just straight up ask them, hey, do you want to go grab a coffee? Like, you know, like, take the piss out of them a little bit, have a bit of a laugh with them, and go, hey, like, you're really cool. Do you want to go grab a coffee, or do you want to go grab a drink, like, next door? I swear to you, most people would say yes. If they already find you, like, even semi-attractive, because the cool thing about women is, they love us for more things than looks. You can be an ugly-looking guy, but be well-dressed, well-put-together, and be funny and smart, and you will get laid. No problem. Absolutely no problem at all. As long as you can talk some shit, you'll be fine. Right? The minute you get your interest, and you have a bit of a laugh with somebody, a bit of a rapport, just openly, honestly say, hey, guys, hey, do you want to grab a drink next door? Do you want to go get a coffee? Because you seem really cool. I'd like to get to know you more, you know? Most people, most girls in that situation would go, yeah, okay, cool. I'm being honest. And if they've got a boyfriend, they say they've got a boyfriend. And if they're not single or they're not interested, they say that. But the thing is, you're still coming out ahead. Do you know why? Because you now are never, ever going to be thinking, what could have been? That's the one thing that kills people into becoming really bitter, is they have too many things in their head of what could have been. What if I'd have just done this? Well, if you did do that and she wasn't interested, now you've got your answer. And you can move on without feeling any sort of regret whatsoever. Women aren't going to slap you or shout at you for wanting to take them out for a drink. It's not going to happen, guys. And if it ever did happen, well, at least you know you're dodging a fucking psycho. Alright? Okay. Anyway. Those are Hobby Nightmares for the day. I love you all a long time. I will speak to you tomorrow for another bit of a rantage. And it is on the Emperor tomorrow. And why? We don't need him in 40k anymore. And that's a bad thing. That is a bad thing. Love you all a long time. Speak to you tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye now.